It's championship golfer Dr. Kevin Most and sometimes Dr. Kevin Most. Good morning, Dr. Most.
Good morning, Steve. How are you guys doing today?
I say championship golfer.
Feeling great.
Even though we know you're a great doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you and your partner Larry won a tournament called the Invitational for the first time after trying for how many years?
I believe we tried for 24 years.
Oh, my God. That's great news.
And they won.
Wow. Congratulations.
I just happen to be the observer. Larry Ryan, our good friend,
Larry's a great guy.
Played outstanding, and I just happen to walk along the fairways with him, encouraging him.
I don't think that's true. I know Larry played well, but I don't think that's true. But I think it's very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. It was pretty cool. We had Caddy and Forrest were two guys that we've both known for 50 years. So between the four of us, we had 200 years of experience at the course. It's about time we won. So.
Yeah, and Doc, how old were you when you started caddying at Butterfield Country Club?
I was 9.
9 years old. And
Wow.
he's 17 now, so that's 8 years.
Yeah.
I know it's been a while.
Well, it's cool, too, because you've been playing in this tournament for so many years, and at some point you're like, forget it. It's never going to happen. By the way, I've just lived it this last weekend with my husband and his brother who've been playing in a tournament. They've never won. And I'm thinking to myself, it's never going to happen. But you're giving me hope.
Never give up.
You're giving me hope.
Never give up, never surrender.
They can do it.
The notes that Dr. Most sends us every week, we post with the podcast. How does that work, Miranda? Do you put them on there with Scotch tape, or how does that actually work?
So, Steve, I copy and paste the notes on the website, and they're right there with the interview.
So the podcast and the notes will be together.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic news.
So good.
So much more efficient than taking individual pieces of paper around all the listeners.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, you tried to do that.
It's no good.
Slow.
So Dr. Most, a lot of people stop me on the street. They say, Steve, and I say, what? They say, when you talk to Dr. Most, could you bring up more things wrong with you instead of talking about us? I said, sure, I could do that. So, Doc, I've had a weird thing going on recently where my voice is kind of given out. And sadly, for people who don't like this show, not to the extent where I can't do it, but it sort of quits on me. And a mutual friend in the business who had a similar problem gave me some vocal exercises to do. Because it's not a sore throat. It's just the voice just kind of goes, it just stops working. So one is, what's wrong with me, Doc? And I know that's a long question. But two, these vocal exercises, is that the standard treatment?
Yeah, it really would be, at least initially, because, the vocal cords are essentially muscles that the brain tells us how to work and when to work and what to say. So actually exercising it is appropriate. Now, someone like you who uses it a lot, think of the country western singers and the Beyoncés and the Taylor Swifts and how much they...
A lot of people compare me to Adele. They say I'm the Adele of talk radio. Yeah.
Correct, yeah. But they all take vocal exercises as well. And you just need to make sure that it's not something else, right?
Well, what else would it be?
There's, thyroid problem. One of the nerves that works the vocal cords goes around the thyroid there.
Oh, my God.
So make sure that there's not a polyp on your vocal cords. So,
I got a polyp on my vocal cords.
But it certainly sounds like, hey, you're doing the right things initially. And if it continues, then, I would strongly recommend seeing a good ENT and just have them take the scope and look there and make sure everything looks okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They can
That's
use
one of
the same scope as your colonoscopy scope.
Oh, no, I don't think so. That's one of the exercises.
Is that what you do?
Yeah, they're called lip bubblers.
Is it working?
I don't know. It makes me sound funny.
I don't think your voice is cracked in days.
Yeah. It just feels like at various parts of the day, and it doesn't happen every day, but it just feels like I'm going through puberty again. Like re-puberty.
It could even be just a simple viral infection that's just kind of inflamed the vocal cords that will go away. Laryngitis, when people get laryngitis, like, oh, give me an antibiotic, I want my voice back. And, then the spouse is saying, don't give him an antibiotic, I don't want his voice back. But, it's one of those where really it's just going to be time that's going to be before it comes back.
You think it's possible that it's one of the texters that listens every day but doesn't like me is slowly poisoning me? Is that possible?
It is possible, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
Yes.
All right, number one on your list today is what?
Well, you know what? I think, kids are going back to school right now, and parents often say, oh, you know what, check the box, let's get them in for their school physical. And just don't want to minimize the importance of that. Even kids that are, in grade school and high school, that's the one time you take a healthy young child and let a doctor examine them, talk to them, make sure that they're looking for all the appropriate things as they're starting to age. And so, don't minimize that time. Allow that to happen and make sure that, the doctor has a good opportunity to make sure they're growing appropriately, hitting all their milestones and all of those things. And then as we get into college, it's probably even more important that we think about the health of our children as we send them off to college, right? It's, hey, can this all fit in the car? Can we pack it up and let's drive? But we don't stop and think and say, hey, what happens when they get sick at college? Have we checked all those boxes to make sure that we're ready for that as well?
Just call your regular physician and say, I need to get my kid in. I assume they're slammed right now, aren't they?
They are. This is probably the busiest time for them right now. Kids are going back to school here in a couple of weeks. So certainly if you haven't scheduled it, it's going to be could be a little difficult, but certainly important to do it. And, that's the other time to make sure that all their immunizations are up to date because, the schools are going to say, hey, you haven't had your physical, you haven't had your immunizations. Come back when you've had those things.
Well, and it's important, too, to remind the kids that you have had this done and maybe give them an important paper to keep it or give it to the school that they're going to. Because as a kid, you go off to college and all of a sudden you get like mononucleosis and you're calling your mom going, I don't know what's wrong. And you're at the...
And every kid does it.
Exactly. So you should just somehow either give them a note or be able to get there and help the doctor with knowing what they need to know. I want to move on to a very special item that Steve has happening at the end of the month, and that is a colonoscopy.
I can't wait.
So we know that AI is taking over everything, or at least helping us. And we talked about it a little bit, Dr. Most, with AI helping with medical records. But now colonoscopies may be a thing of the past, and it goes up to AI. Explain that.
Well, it's interesting. When we look at colonoscopies, and it's still the best way, it's a gold standard to identify colon cancers. But in the past, we've talked about the blood tests and the DNA tests that are going on. But now what we're looking at is when individuals are doing a colonoscopy, you're expecting that the gastroenterologist is looking and finding every potential place for a polyp while he's doing the colonoscopy. What we have now is a couple machines that actually, while the gastroenterologist is doing this, it's looking at the video and it's identifying areas that, hey, that's an area of concern and you appear to have missed it. So one just got approved last week, Magenta Colo, which will be interesting because it uses AI as well. So it's continuously learning as it's doing this. So the gastroenterologist may see an area and say, I don't think that's much. The machine is going to say, hey, that we have been told and we have known from history is an area that we need to be concerned. Go back and biopsy that area. So we know that as gastroenterologists do a lot of these cases, as it gets later in the day, we see that their detection rate goes down a little bit. So this is going to be helpful to make sure that we don't miss any early colon cancers and that we don't have that what we call interval find, 5 years or 3 years later.
So when it comes to this, the preparation is worse than the actual procedure. I've had a couple. Is there anything going on with the preparation that we could change? Maybe you've developed an app where you can just hold the phone up to my butt. Is there anything else we can do?
Yeah, the prep always was bad, right? Remember, you used to have to drink those gallons of things,
yes.
and it was not a lot of fun.
Awful.
There is new prep out now that tastes a lot better and is much lower volume and works just as well. So certainly the prep is the most important thing. And people say, oh, I hate the prep, but you know what? The prep is what makes the test accurate. So please don't minimize the prep because you'd rather have one day of discomfort or one afternoon of discomfort than miss a colon cancer. So doctors aren't being mean by making you do the prep appropriately, but it's going to make for the test to be much more accurate.
So essentially, just to make this as tolerable as possible, but to give you a visual, we have to clear the traffic off the highway so we can see if there's any trouble on the highway.
Exactly.
Okay. All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
You guys know what the traffic is?
Yeah, I know what the traffic is.
No
need to tell us about the traffic.
Much more with Dr. Kevin Most in just a second. Dr. Kevin Most rejoins us now. Dr. Kevin Most, quick story because I forgot to tell it before. Now we don't have time to do it here either. The Ron Santos story I promised to tell you about his toupee. I'll tell you after 7 o'clock.
Okay. That's a good tease.
All right. You have vertigo?
I have vertigo right now. Everything got dizzy when I stood up and you were talking to Dr. Most on the phone. So Dr. Most, I have had vertigo before, because since we're talking about our own things, I noticed it coming on like a couple days ago, but not major. Nothing was spinning too much. But then yesterday when I laid down and then trying to sleep, every time I turned my head, it would get a little spinny. So I know that I've had it, but I haven't had it in years and years and years. So what could cause it out of the blue?
Well, vertigo is extremely common, so people have to understand that. And if you think about our balance system, it's pretty cool, right? We have receptors on the soles of our feet, we have our vision, we have our inner ear. And as long as all three of those are sending the message to the brain about our position of our body, then we don't have dizziness. But when something is off, we do have dizziness. We're getting a different message from each of the places. People have vertigo, it's almost always an inner ear issue. We have these tiny little crystals in our inner ear that sometimes will get dislodged. And when that happens, it is sending a message to the brain that's saying, hey, you're in this position, and your vision and your feet are telling you, hey, no, we're in this position, and you end up with dizziness. So what I would strongly recommend is there's something you can simply do at home. Steve was talking about it, something called the Epley maneuver, and you have something called benign positional vertigo. There are other bad things that cause vertigo, but we're not going there because that's not the case. 99% of these are benign positional vertigo. You can go online and just Google Epley maneuver, and it will show you the maneuvers that you move your head so that these crystals that have been dislodged will get back where they're supposed to be, and the message to your brain will tell you your exact position, and your dizziness will go away. The vast majority of time, it'll go away without having to do these, but sometimes this will actually, I don't want to say cure it, but make it go away very quickly. Other times it may take 2-3 days in some people's cases.
And will it ever, if I didn't do the Epley maneuver or the Carol Foster somersault maneuver, would it just go away on its own, or will I just have these little, it will?
Yeah, eventually it will. You know, the crystals eventually will settle back down in place, and the message to your brain will be, people who have vertigo sometimes have it for quite a while, but for the vast majority of people, it's going to resolve after a few days.
A texter from the 630. I lost my 42-year-old son a year ago from colon cancer. God bless you. It's a terrible thing to hear, and can't imagine how painful that is. I'm very sorry to hear that. The caller, or I should say the texter, said, should we be scanning earlier in age?
Absolutely. You know, when we used to look at, hey, the age for colon cancer used to be, or for screening used to be 50. Now it's dropped down. There are some people say it should go as early as 40. You know, Eddie Olczyk, he was diagnosed at 48, 49.
Yeah, it wasn't 50.
Yeah. I lost a dear cousin from colon cancer well before the age of 50. So, you know, familial history used to say, hey, if you have history of it in your family, then you move up the date. We've noticed that the incidence of colon cancer, especially in the United States and Western countries, has gone up, mainly because of our diet. So we have already moved that down. And really, it's going to be, do we move it down even further? So a lot of people don't like to have the colonoscopy, but they're saying, hey, when will that blood test get here? So now we can start looking for this earlier in people with a simple blood test.
There is just phenomenal notes from you. And what I'd like to do is save half of this for next time, because I want to get to this skin cancer thing before we run out of time. And you're going to Austin, Texas for a family thing shortly, which is the same temperature as the sun right now. So what do we know about AI and skin cancer possibilities? It's a good thing, I assume.
Well, it is a good thing, but the FDA is extremely hesitant. So the difference between the two things with skin cancer we're talking about, as well as the colon cancer, is trying to use this technology where a doctor visualizes something and makes a diagnosis. Well, they're saying, well, could we have an AI app on our phone for skin cancer? And the FDA is saying, wait a second, you do that, you're taking the doctor out. And two things happen there. One, you want to make sure it's a proper diagnosis. Two, you want to make sure that the treatment's appropriate. And three, you want to make sure that the counseling is there for individuals who get it. So will we get to a point where we have an AI for skin cancer? Probably. But again, it's not the complete exam that you get from a dermatologist. So there is something called Mole Mapper. If you just Google that, it's from Oregon Health University. They're starting to set up just to collect as much data as they possibly can. But it certainly is something that will be in the future. But right now, the importance of seeing your doctor where they counsel you about what skin protection you should wear, what else do you need to look for, because not all the problems on skin are cancers. So we have to understand that the skin is our biggest defense mechanism we have against all infections. So seeing a dermatologist and making sure that you're getting that complete exam and the education on how to treat your skin is much more important than having an app that you can put on a spot.
I do have a good idea, though, for our friend Dr. Ashish Bacha, who is a great dermatologist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know the game Whack-A-Mole? So
Yeah.
here's the AI. You get a picture of your skin, and anytime a mole pops up, he takes a rubber hammer and he smacks it. Huh? What do you think?
You know, it is funny that you say that. A lot of dermatology right now is being done by telehealth, so it is kind of starting down that way.
Wow.
And having them say, oh, you know what, that's a little more serious. Get in right away, or, hey, don't worry about that one. We'll check it when you come in for your yearly exam.
Your notes are phenomenal. We'll take up the rest of them when you get back. Have a good trip this weekend. Are you around next week for another visit?
Yeah, I'll be down at the BMW. I'm the medical director for the BMW Championship, so I will be in town all week.
Awesome.
Hanging out with somebody. So
Yeah, and let's see if we can get you and Vince on together to talk about the Evans Scholars later this week.
Yeah, me, Vince. I think Kurt Byron will be in town, so a lot of your buddies will be working this week at the BMW trying to raise some money for the Evans Scholars.
And another doctor called from the 217 in regards to what I was talking about my voice, and he said, just go home and be quiet. All right, well, it seems like good medical advice. Doctor, thank you.
You got it, guys. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Dr. Mose.
Dr. Kevin Mose, CDH, Central DuPage Hospital, Northwestern Medicine.